Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to another gunpla review, and today I'm taking a look at the Gundam Tertium, which is Cid's mobile suit from High Grade Build Divers Re-Rise. So as you can tell from the box right here, this in general is just a bit of a color swap and part swap of the Gundam Seltsam we saw a month or so ago. So don't be surprised if a lot of the things I say in this review are exactly the same as back then. But anyway, once again, this video right here, it would not be possible without those absolutely awesome people over at Hobbylink Japan. So if you do want a high grade Gundam Tertium of your own, then check out that link down there in the description. Now let's go on to the review. So this is one of those odd situations where I actually just got the gunpla and was about to sit down to do a review, so you actually get to see me opening up the box for a change. So the box is exactly as you'd expect, some box art in the front there, pretty awesome. On the first side, we've got a whole bunch of images of what we'll be seeing once this thing is put together. Once again, so far so good. And around then, on the second side, we've got a rear and front image of the finished kit, as well as a blurb about the Gundam Tertium itself. And once again, as usual, you can pause this video right now if you want to read that blurb. Inside this box, we've got the usual, that is the manual, as well as 5 bags of plastic. As for the runners in here, we've got 4 runners from the Gundam Mk.III, that is the high-grade Gundam Mk.III that has not even existed yet, but expect that to come soon because this seems to be devolving into one. As for runners that are unique to this box right here, we've only got the one, which is this yellow one. This is the only Gundam Tertium runner in the box. And besides that, then we've got some polycaps, some beams, and then these stickers. So as for stickers, it's only the eyes, a head camera, and a sight from one of the rifles, so not so bad. Anyway, that right there is what Gundam Tertium looks like out of the box, just snapped together with a little bit of patent lining and the included stickers. That is it. So pretty much some minimal effort. So if you're like me, the first question you'll have about this kit is, how different is it to this right here, Gundam Seltsam? And the answer is that. Essentially, the only difference is that new V-fin and the face. That is about it. Otherwise, physically, it's exactly the same as the Seltsam right there. Besides that, the most obvious difference is that big old arm and the color swap. As for the color swap, as far as I can see, that shade of purple you're seeing on both of them is pretty much identical. And it's just been that the purple parts have been swapped out for white, and the dark navy parts have been swapped out for the same shade of purple. That is where the white is on that one. Get what I mean? So essentially, you could probably steal all the purple parts of the Seltsam, put it onto the Tertium, and end up with one purple Gundam. But in general, just like you can see right there, the only major difference is that V-fin and the fact that the little muzzle section or mouth section there is a bit different too. That little kind of mask section there with the extra eyeballs, that is included on the runners of the Turtium right here. You just don't get the little muzzle section for attaching it. See, there she blows. So on the whole, physically identical besides the colors, that arm, and some head parts. That is it. So that is enough of comparing it to the Gundam Seltsam. Let's judge it on its own merits. Anyway, there is the full 360-degree spin, so you can check out every aspect of this kit, all that detail, etc. And this is definitely a kit for those with a love of Zeta-style designs. Because essentially, that's what this is. Heavily based on the Gundam Mk.III. Once again, the high-grade Gundam Mk.III does not exist yet, but going from the Seltsam to this, the only next step could possibly be a high-grade Gundam Mk.III. The color scheme on this is quite nice. That is a very cool white and a palish yellow and blue. There is quite a bit of detailing to line up on here. It looks pretty good. I find the upper arm is pretty wicked for getting a seam line in it, but on the whole, it looks pretty cool. But if we do take the art in the manual and pop it down beside it, you can notice something is missing in here. A little something I'm not sure if you'll even notice. It's huge! The lance and the shield that we saw with the Seltsam is not included. Sold separately in here, the Seltsam arms. So today we'll take a look at this as well because I guess it just makes sense. These are the weapons we're using with this, as well as a big old blue Seltsam arm. But we'll leave that till after we're done with this guy. But anyway, onto the accessories. So there is the Gundam Tertium with absolutely everything that it comes with, and I have to say this isn't really a lot. And this is the first time in a long time that I got to the end of the manual and I was like, that's it? I honestly did feel it felt a little bit short on stuff. But anyway, what we get in here is a pair of beam sabers. We get 2 different types of beam rifles. That's this one right here, which is the typical Gundam Mk.III beam rifle. And awesomely enough, we get a second beam rifle in here, which is a little more boxy, a little bit more planky, and I love it. It looks so cool. We also get 2 extra removable E-caps, as well as a pair of alternate holding hands that, well, they've got nothing to hold. But anyway, let's check them all out. So first up in here, we've got a fairly standard looking set of beam sabers. And when I say fairly standard looking, the reason I say that is because these are a bit, well, substandard. And the reason is because these are barely held in at all. I mean, seriously, look at this. Look at this. That is bad. This one doesn't seem to want to come out as readily, but it's still just about hanging in there. Woo! Next up, have you ever seen the likes of this? I've never seen this before. This is the beam saber into the hand and push on through. What? So not only can the beams barely fit into this, these barely fit into the hands. I mean, you can push it right on through like that. And then pow! Oh, that isn't actually what I was trying to show, but yeah, it does have Seltsam's fairly loose shoulders. They're not quite loose, they just like to pop out with a bit of wiggling. A bit on the strange side there. And honestly, all of that is quite forgivable to me, but what really drives me crazy is the fact that there's nowhere to store these on the mobile suit. Because honestly, if you take a quick look at the actual Gundam Mk.III, it does store the beam sabers right there on the shield, and this, well, it has no shield, so where does it stick its beam sabers? I guess you could shove them in the holes back here where the weapons it's meant to have attach, but it doesn't have those weapons, so I guess you could just pop the beam sabers in there or something? I don't know. Maybe just grab onto them there and ride them like a bike. I don't know. Anyway, swiftly moving on. Moving on to the ranged weapons, and next up is the beam rifle. This is somewhat like the Mk.III's beam rifle, a little bit shorter. Maybe Mk.III does come with this actual beam rifle, I'm not sure. But all in all, it looks pretty nice. It does have a peg on the side of it right there for attaching it to the mobile suit, but this could have been executed a little nicer. It just looks like a little H on the side of it there. Instead of a little peg, maybe you could swing out and in to kind of mask the fact that it's a peg. But once again, on the whole though, it still looks pretty nice. Also, we don't get a foil sticker for on the side there, so that will be something you might have to paint. And definitely the coolest aspect about this is the removable E-cap. We do get 2 spares of these, but you know what isn't awesome? The fact that there's nowhere on the mobile suit to store the spare E-caps. Because guess what? You guessed it! The Mk.III stores its E-caps on the inside of the shield, and this doesn't have a shield. I don't know, maybe you can like treat down here like a pocket or something and pop it in and keep that for later. Then once you're out of ammo, just like kick up the leg and this comes flying out like and snatch it. Maybe something like that. Of course, as you'd expect when this is not in use, it can be attached into one of these holes. Just like so. So it holds on pretty well. Next up then, we do have a second beam rifle, and I love this design. It looks great. We do have an extra part around the side there. Sadly, as you can see, the inside of that canister section is hollow, which is a bit lousy looking. Moving around to this side, we've got that little H-shaped adapter once again. Besides those facts, though, I do like the design of this. And the coolest aspect is, and you might be like, this doesn't have an E-cap. Yes, it does. So that little segment you can see coming out underneath there, that is the E-cap. This might be a bit hard to get out, actually. Yep, I actually had to cut away there just to get it out. But anyway, that's what it looks like without the E-cap. That right there is the E-cap, of course, and that just slots in just like that. So it is, in general, hidden. So I assume with the actual beam rifle, there must be a release mechanism that ejects that, because otherwise, it's not getting it out of there, because I had to literally take a nipper, slightly grab the edge of it, and then pull it out like that, because there's no way I was going to catch it with my fingers. So just like we saw with the other beam rifle, that can be stored just into one of these holes, and looks just like that right there. The last thing then we have in here is an extra set of hands. So the standard hands are these holding hands right here, which you've been seeing for the whole review. If you pop those out, we also do have a pair of these ones right here, which are a type of holding hand. These, of course, are for holding that big old Seltsam lance that came with the Gundam Seltsam, but one of these does not come with this guy. Once again, sold separately in here, and I guess it's about time to look in there. I will bring this guy back for the articulation in a little while, but let's move on to the weapons in this box. So once again, this right here is the high-grade Seltsam Arms support weapon. This is sold separately to the actual Gundam Tertium. There's a quick look at the side of the box. We've got the Love Phantom right there, so of course you can use the arms with any kit that you like, including this goof right here that seems to have lost a contact lens. And then there is the lance with the Gundam we're looking at right now, and there is the absolutely awesome GBN guard frame equipped with all these weapons. Around on the other side, we don't actually have a blurb this time. There is the contents of the box. So a lance, arm, shield, and some backpack parts. These I actually have built earlier. So there we go. Lance backpack, shield cannon, and the arm. These are identical to what we saw with the Gundam Seltsam, it's just a color swap. And for those that are curious, this all comes on just 2 runners. So once again, there is everything that comes in the box, exactly the same as the Seltsam. That is a blue variant of the Seltsam arm, once again 100% identical bar the color. So if you do want to see more about this, check out this review. Next up then is the folding shield binder. Once again, it goes without saying that this is identical to this one right here we saw with the Gundam Seltsam besides the color. This is just in a kind of dark royal blue instead of that burning orange. This has all those awesome moving parts we saw on the other version, which is the fold out burst launcher, which looks fantastic. This arm here that has a decent amount of articulation does feature some hollow parts, which may be a turn off for some. This flip up section here and that handle inside of there, but all in all, this is a pretty rad weapon right here. The one thing that kind of kills me about this, which I like about the Seltsam arm though, is that this shield segment is not swappable to this side. Although we do have holes here on the side, as you can see, this is an asymmetrical design, so it doesn't flip around to this side at all. It is missing some of the connection parts, so if you're hoping to have one of these on one side of your mecha, one then on the other side, well, too bad you can't really do it without modification. However, as for the Seltsam arm, you can just pop off this arm like this, and because they made the hands kind of like an iguanodon's hands, that is a thumb on both sides, that means they are completely symmetrical and can be popped on like this as a left or right arm. So if you do get 2 of these kits, you can attach an arm on either side of your Gundam. So next up then, we've got the Hyper Burst Lance. This is once again exactly the same as what we saw with the Seltsam. It still has the same sort of soft, matte finish, which is really nice. And it still extends out just like that. But anyway, let's try these on the Turtium. So in with the Turtium. Move over a bit. This kit doesn't actually need this little backpack part. That's just for if you want to use it on other kits. So move that on out of the way. That then attaches into this hole right here. Pop on the lance up here like so. And then the shield binder just pops onto this side then, just like that. So there we go, there is Gundam Tertium with the Seltsam arms. Those look pretty cool in those colors, I have to say. The blue up here does not match anything on the kit, however, but again, that's not necessarily an issue, but all in all, it looks pretty good. So at this point, I'm going to throw up some footage of what it looks like in some poses with those weapons for your enjoyment, while I mention something that has me a little bit confused. So I ranked Gundam Seltsam bronze tier because it had really bad articulation, and the worst part is, it kept falling apart on me. So of course the articulation with this kit is exactly the same as what we saw with the Seltsam, which is that it is a little bit on the restricted side when it comes to the elbows, the knees, etc. But what isn't the same is, this kit isn't falling apart on me all the time. Sure, if you wiggle around the shoulders a bit, they will pop out, but it takes quite a bit of wiggling. While recording this, I did pick up the Seltsam again. It fell to pieces as expected, but it reminded me of all the flaws it had that this doesn't seem to have. For example, the waist on this never falls apart on me. The shoulders rarely fall apart on me, and although, you know, the articulation isn't the greatest, when it's not falling apart, it means, well, that the not great articulation is kind of forgivable. One thing that is definitely the same as the lateral movement on the legs here is incredibly loose, just like I saw with the Seltsam right here. So that does mean on the glass table it can tend to kind of shift out like this and fall into the splits. But once again, and in general, I'm sure most people aren't posing it on a glass table. So why is this not as bad as this? Well, look at that. He's ready to go, like absolutely ready to go. But yeah, what is the difference between these two kits here? They're technically, physically identical. Sure, the plastic in places is a different color, so this may have a bit of an effect on the surface of the plastic, but I can't really blame that. The only thing I can assume the issue is with the polycaps, because before, I built multiple different versions of the Iron-Blooded Orphans kits, all of which use the same polycaps. But some kits were super loose, some were super tight, and it even came to the point where I built 2 versions of the Astaroth. One was super loose, one wasn't super loose. And the only thing it really came down to was this right here, the polycap. So a lot of time people ask me why I say I'm happy when something has a polycap-free build, and the reason is they're kind of dodgy. They're not the greatest design really. They're like a little rubber cup or little rubber joint that is only making use of the properties of rubber. And the particular property I'm talking about is the traction. to make sure that the joint doesn't move around the way you don't want it to. But the other property of rubber is, well, it stretches. So I don't know, polycaps can be a little bit on the sketchy side. And maybe, just maybe, not every Seltsam is like mine right here, and maybe he should have been silver tier. I'm not sure. Poor guy probably got a bad rap for nothing. So moving now onto the articulation, and like I mentioned, this is so much less likely to fall apart than the Seltsam that I built. Again, I blame the polycaps, and even these aren't falling out as much. It's very, very bizarre. He is dropping down there, but on the whole, it's better. And once again, this might have been an isolated case. So anyway, we've got a double jointed giggity-giggity-goo neck. There's it all the way up. Woo. All the way down. It's really blocked by that collar. Wow. The primary motion of the shoulders is to the front. That means the polycap moves slightly out to the front there. We've got the full spin, and that right there is a ball joint. The shoulders here, they can move independent to the arm, so they can move up out of the way. You can get a nice flare on those shoulders if you want to, without moving the arms. There, ooh, yeah. Definitely the loosest joint on here, but it's not necessarily loose. Like I said, it just kind of wiggles its way out eventually, so just keep an eye on that. But anyway, as for the arm, never mind. Anyway, as for that arm all the way up, make sure to support that joint in there or it's going to pop out, but that's what you get. The rotation on the arm of this is not in the upper arm, it's actually in the forearm here on this peg, which once again isn't the most secure. Actually, this is going to send it through the ringer, isn't it? This is where it's all going to start falling apart on me and make what I just said completely irrelevant. But anywho, I absolutely despise this elbow. I know they're trying to keep it accurate, but it's just a 1-point bend and it only gets it to there. On top of that, it doesn't hold together all that great, and in general, they seem to want you to have the arm rotated this way, which isn't the way that the bend actually goes, but once again, that's based on the original design. Down here then, we've got your standard ball joint, so it does what a ball joint does. Nothing moves around here in the backpack, just those funny little boosters pointing all in different directions. For the waist joint, we have a double ball joint polycap setup, so that nets us that bend to the front, which is alright. This bend out to the back, there goes that piece. Finally, one of the verniers fell out. Don't use those for leverage. Next up then, we've got a tiny little bit of side to side, not a whole lot, and that full rotation right there. So the front skirting armor on this is connected on the runner, but you can snip those apart so they move independently. It's just a set of ball joints, so they don't do a whole lot. Pretty generic side skirt here, which is on a polycap, but it has this little bit of a section that moves in behind the butt flap there, which means it doesn't allow you to move it forward and back too much. Even though it does have a peg which would allow that, that little bit of armor gets in the way. Next up, we've got a previous level static butt flap. That's going to get in the way in the legs, I can tell you that for nothing. Inside the waist here, we've got a rocking side-to-side mechanism, which allows the hip peg to move down and up, just like so, to get a little bit more out of the leg movement. Speaking of the leg movement, there is the kick all the way to the front, so about parallel to the ground, a little less. There it is out to the back, absolutely pathetic, as you'd expect. As for the splits, we can pretty much get the whole thing. I don't know what's catching on this side. Oh. Okay, yeah. Oh, she's starting to shed parts! Anyway, once again, there is the splits. It can pull that off. Very loose joint here, though. We've got that full spin right here. Exactly like with the Seltsam, that's a pretty pathetic bend at the knee. You know, it's not the worst, but it could sure be a lot better. We've got some moving panels around the back here. This one can move up and down like this. There's a vernier inside of that. This lower panel can move up and down as well. Flipping that around to the front, and this Gundam has one of the funniest things ever. It's got shin guns. Guns in its shins. Not just one shin gun, but a pair of shin guns. And yeah, inside of there, it's not the prettiest looking. Once again, quite a few hollow parts on this kit. This little bit down here moves barely, and these ankles right here, quite frankly, are abysmal. So we have a rocking back and forward motion right here, and then a ball joint, so you can never get them to point down the way. And for a space use mobile suit, that drives me ballistic. For like flying poses, you can't get them to point down the way. Also no bend in the toes. Anyway, let's check out the functional movement on the ground. Get out of the way there. So as usual, this is just to test the range of motion we can get without lifting the foot off the ground. So move all these flaps out of the way, and that's pretty ugly, honestly. But anyway, there it is all the way to the back. That is not great. Moving it all the way to the front. That's actually pretty good. That's not bad at all. With that little bend there, we can get quite the decent little crouch. Too bad the foot doesn't bend though. Finally then, the pivot side. Oh man, to side is absolutely terrible. Anyway, that right there is it for the review, and you know, at the beginning of this review I felt like this was getting a little bit better than what we saw with the Seltsam. Definitely without a single doubt the polycaps in this kit were better than the ones I saw in my Seltsam, so it doesn't fall apart at the waist all the time, it's not as inclined to fall apart at the shoulders all the time, and it isn't as loose in the waist, but still at the end of the day this is just a bronze tier gunpla that really isn't up to spec for 2020. I almost said 2019. It does look awesome, and it does give me a little bit of hope that the Mk.III, the high-grade Gundam Mk.III, which we obviously will be getting, will be better. Hopefully it won't be as loose, as the Mk.III doesn't have as many kind of edgy aspects as this right here, like the sonic legs, the pointy parts, those weird verniers around back on the backpack, etc. It may not be the hassle that this kit right here is, but on the whole, it does look awesome. That Zeta-ish vibe Gundamness it has looks really cool. But the build in general will let you down. Also, this kit does not come with very much in the lines of accessories. I do like the beam rifles, they do look cool, but once again, they are a little bit on the basic side. The beam sabers blow, they don't make any sense. And all in all, I do feel that this is a kit that has missed the mark to some degree. Oh yeah, and also the weapons that are kind of iconic to this kit don't come in the box, you have to buy them separately, which also is a bit odd. But yeah, bronze tier sadly, but I did enjoy it a slight little bit more than I did with the Seltsam. Anyway, if you do want one of your own, there's a link down there in the description. You can get yours at Hobbylink Japan. Once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. Consider leaving a like. Make sure to come back for more gunpla reviews, and I'll see you next time. Of course, I can't end this video right here without the shout out to all of you who support me on the channel memberships and over on Patreon, like Craig Jury, Kaiser721, Forged Horizons, Bolwick, Tyler Sanders, Caleb Engelhart, and Hank Handsome.